All right, and it looks like we are recording. So as I said, there's still a few more people hopping on, but good morning and thank you everyone for joining us for the Summit Speaker Series hosted by the Utah Office of Outdoor Recreation. This is our 5th COVID-19 focused webinar, although we normally host the Summit Speaker Series events with our partners, Snow Sports Industries America, the Economic Development Corporation of Utah, and the Utah Outdoor Association. These Summit Speaker Series are an extension of the Utah Outdoor Recreation Summit, which we are hosting as a hybrid summit this year, and we will offer a ton of pre-recorded content, as well as live-streamed keynotes, or the option to attend the summit in person, keeping in mind that in-person attendance will be limited. If you have any questions, I'll make sure to put my email into the chat, or you can also go to utahoutdoorsummit.com for more information. Good morning, my name is India Nielsen. I'm a program manager in the Office of Outdoor Recreation, and our discussion today is about responsible recreation. But before we get into that, I need to cover just a few housekeeping items. So we will keep hosting more of these webinar style Summit Speaker Series. If you have any questions or you have a topic to suggest, anything like that, email outdoorteam@utah.gov. I will put that into the chat as well. And again, one of our panels actually came up from someone emailing us and suggesting the topic. So we're definitely open to doing that. Additionally, as I've mentioned, as hopefully you all will see up in the corner, we are recording this presentation and we'll share the link to it along with any resources that our speakers mentioned today. So keep an eye out for that email and feel free to share any resources with your network. This recording, as well as our past Summit Speaker Series recordings, are on our YouTube channel. So I'll share that link as well. And then a final note about this recording, because it is being recorded, we are going to be keeping everyone on mute, and that is including during the Q&A. Q&A is going to begin around 9:15, and at that point, please use the chat box to ask your questions. We will keep everyone muted for the entirety of this presentation as well as during Q&A. And if we don't have time for a question that gets chatted, we will consider that for a future Summit Speaker Series. With that, I am done with housekeeping, and I would like to turn the time over to our director and today's moderator, Pitt, who will introduce our panelists.
Thank you, India, and thanks for everybody for attending today, and for India for putting this together and a great panel. I'm excited about the conversations we're going to have today around responsible recreation. And as you all know, obviously, if you've been out recreating lately and during this COVID, it is busy out there. A lot of new people are discovering the benefits of the outdoors and outdoor recreation and the health and wellness and peace of mind that it brings to get out on the trails. And this is a conversation that needs to happen. And you know, all of us as stewards of the land and of recreation, hopefully we can learn from each other, and then hopefully to educate and teach others as we meet them out and about. Kind of an interesting morning this morning to wake up and see snow on the top of the mountains here in the Wasatch in June. A little dusting of snow, cool us off and keep it nice and cool here in Salt Lake, which is great. And we always appreciate during the summer a little bit of cool weather. So, but in general, this week and the last couple of weeks have been fantastic weather and fantastic just scenery and greenery and everything else here in northern Utah to be recreating. So I hope each and every one of you are getting out, taking the opportunity, even with all the craziness that's going on in the world today, take the opportunity to get out and breathe some fresh air and enjoy an activity that you enjoy, because truly is a prime season here in northern Utah and throughout the state. And you know, I hope everybody's been able to take advantage of that. So today on our panel, we have some really great panelists here to discuss, and with some great experience that will help us to understand the responsible recreation idea a little bit better and give us some good tips on how we can do our part. First, we have Mark Bareka, and he has served as REI's Government Affairs Director since 2011, and its Director of Community Affairs since early 2013. In the policy realm, Mark guides the co-op's engagement in federal, state, and local issues. This includes efforts to assure REI's current and future members can continue to enjoy outdoor recreation whether that be recreating close to home or at the nation's many iconic destinations. It also includes advocacy on matters that affect retailers, such as Main Street business regulation, internet sales, and international trade. Mark also oversees the Co-op's community grant program, and most recently, the program distributed more than $9 million to over 300 local, regional, and national organizations that help sustain and promote the country's inspiring places to recreate. So before joining REI, Mark served as a technology policy advisor to Secretary Gary Locke at the U.S. Department of Commerce. And then prior to that, he worked 12 years in various public policy roles at Microsoft, both in Washington, D.C. and in Washington State. And he spent the first part of his career as a telecommunications attorney, holds his JD from Georgetown University and a BA from Princeton University. So we're real excited to have Mark here and to discuss with us today. So welcome, Mark. Next on the panel, we have Phill Monson. So Phill has been a longtime adventurer, photographer, and stewardship advocate. He defines his why is to promote wilderness ethics and encourage outdoor stewardship. He envisions a world where all who enjoy the outdoors do so responsibly, ethically, and strive to put nature first. He also has an alter ego on Instagram of Nigel the Litter Hunter. If any of you have seen him, may be familiar with that. Also, he grew up in Idaho and Oregon, but he considers Utah home and lives here in Centerville with his wife, Stacy, children, Claire and Connor, and their dog, Mesa. Welcome, Phill, and we're excited to hear from you as well. Lastly, we have Devan Chavez, and he is the Assistant Public Information Officer for the Utah Division of Parks and Recreation. So prior to working at Utah State Parks, he worked as a multimedia journalist in St. George. He earned his bachelor's degree in communications from Southern Utah University. And Devan's main roles for the state include managing the division's websites, social media accounts, press releases, crisis communication, harmful algae blooms and waterborne pathogen messaging, and communicating COVID-19 impacts. So Devan has definitely had a big job recently in doing all of this communication that's need to be done as people have been getting out and recreating. So we're excited to have Devan here as well. All right, so let's jump into some questions and hear from these great panelists. So I'd like to begin by asking each of you kind of a brief history of your work on responsible recreation or hashtag responsible recreation, hashtag recreate responsibly, and hashtag adventure responsibly. Phill, let's start with you on this one, since adventure responsibly is something you've been working on for a long while, and kind of give us a little history of how that came about.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. First of all, thank you so much for having me on this panel. It's an honor to be here and talk about a subject that I'm incredibly passionate about and have been so, well, I would say my whole life, but even more so now, which is the idea of adventure responsibly. Over the past few years, I've just have noticed, it's more and more news stories and just stories from other people, seeing things on social media, personal stories of an increase in litter, an increase in vandalism, and people being what I would say woefully unprepared for a wilderness experience, just in this in this digital age. And so the idea kind of struck me that outdoor popularity has outpaced outdoor awareness. And so wanting to not only promote the idea of stewardship and help people be prepared, not only for their own safety, but for the safety of others and for the safety of the environment, I started Adventure Responsibly about 3 years ago, with the why behind that being we exist to promote wilderness ethics and encourage outdoor stewardship and educate outdoor awareness. What we do, or mostly I like to say we, sounds cooler, but what we do is focus on messaging education, community action. We just happen to, make apparel and stickers to help up that message and to help give back to. Well, I hate the word give back, but it's a lot of paying forward. Portion of the proceeds going to the National Park Foundation and various organizations. And then as well to help fund litter cleanups. We promoted and organized either through group efforts or my own just last year to clean up a lot of the public lands in here in Utah and our beloved Wasatch, and removed over 2,500 pounds of litter, and are on track to double that this year. Fortunately, I don't know, but that's a little bit of the gist.
Sorry about that. Had to unmute as is normal with these. Thanks, Phill. Thanks for kind of the background and yep. Talking about that. Mark, if you're able right now, can you tell us a little bit about kind of your work and history and the your role in the responsible recreation movement?
Yeah, happy to. And I've just picked up audio. I was scrambling for the last 15-20 minutes trying to figure out how to get my device to talk to my machine. I'm sure none of you have experienced that in this time. But I rebooted, and apologies for joining late. But in any event, Mark Barreca, I'm with REI Co-op. We are powering through as best we can these novel times. I would say it was going on 2 months ago now, or maybe even less than 2 months ago. The leadership came to me and my teammates. We run the external affairs at a headquarters for REI. We have people that we rely on across the fleet of stores in Salt Lake and elsewhere that are extensions of the external affairs. A lot of them, unfortunately, are on furlough right now, or they're busy reopening our stores. So the management asked us whether we might be able to start a community effort, and that's how things happen in the outdoors, a community effort to start to speak to just good behavior in the outdoors in a time of COVID. There was recognition that the virus would be with us for quite some time until medicines arrive, vaccines arrive. And so how do we start to develop a shared sense of best practices for still enjoying the outdoors, as many people have demonstrated they want to do, but also do so in a way responsibly where we're not outdoors and also passing around the virus. And so really emanating from our home base in Washington State and then expanding to some of our national organizations, we really quickly assembled, or I should say we put down an idea and people quickly assembled around it, that we needed to have the basics simply articulated and communicated in a uniform fashion across all our stakeholder partners. And in Washington State, it's formally called the Recreate Responsibly Coalition. And we're looking to have uptake as we approach 4th of July in other states as well, among local organizations, statewide organizations. And then operating in the background, we have about a dozen to 2 dozen national organizations, American Hiking Society, Children in Nature Network, to name a couple, who are looking to disseminate the material through their networks so that, as we get deeper into summer, hopefully the message is getting through and people are understanding what the basics are. I'm going to take a shot at sharing my screen so y'all can see what I'm talking about. I don't know if India, you've got to take over, or
I will go ahead. I'll share it from my screen.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
But this is sort of the end of my overview. I'm happy to continue to participate in the conversation. But this is These are the basics that coalition of folks came up with in Washington, as I said, and you know, they're basically 3 things to do before you head out, and 3 things to do once you're on the trail. Understand whether where you're going is actually open and whether people are welcoming you. There are some places who would prefer not to see visitors. Pack your essentials, plan ahead, and consider localism. Stay close to home, where things are safe. Once you're on the trail, practice physical distancing. Avoid unnecessary risks, since first responders have other things to do with their time in a time of COVID. And of course, leave no trace. The take-up was really successful. This all launched, went public before Memorial Day, and I think by the time the Memorial Day weekend was over, we had over 300 organizations from around the country saying that they wanted to be part of this message propagation team. And I think by this point, you know how the internet metrics go. It's kind of hard to get your hands around them, but I saw it written somewhere that we had 1 billion impressions. I don't know what 1 billion impressions means, but it sounds like a lot. So at least organizations that are propagating these messages have propagated them 1 billion times, which I think is extraordinary success for a short-lived effort so far. The intention is to do another communications push around these principles before 4th of July, and then again before Labor Day. I'll just say that there are other manifestations of tips working in parallel. Another set of organizations put out the hashtag responsible recreation. I know the state of Oregon has their own tips. I know in the San Francisco Bay Area, there's a collection of tips. We're all, pushing into these guidelines. They're all very similar, in as best a collaborative fashion as we can. But it's in the nature of America for good ideas to propagate from different places. And so, over the course of time, I think you'll see a bit of deviation among the orgs, but the same general spirit, which is there are certain basic things we need to do to stay safe. Let's go do them, and let's teach others about it.
Great, thank you, Mark. Thank you for that overview of the campaign, and I'm sure many of us have seen that messaging come through all the channels. And like you say, with 1 billion impressions, it's hard to miss it. If any of you follow any outdoor organizations or partners there that have been sharing it, and I think it's been really helpful and was really needed actually for a lot of people to feel that there is a message out there, and there's organizations out there that are helping to educate and to inform people in this time when nobody's not really, everybody's a little unsure of how to carry on with our old activities that we knew so well. Well, how do we do it a little bit different? Devan, I want you to jump in here and talk to us. I know that the state of Utah and has also been pushing a similar message of responsible recreation. What has been the involvement there, and what have you seen as this message has gone out?
All right, just making sure everyone hear me okay. Thumbs up. Awesome. So yeah, a lot of what Mark said rings true, is that a lot of different partners, whether that be REI, National Park Service, different state parks, including Utah state parks, have all been pushing this similar message. So that's where this has been a great thing, in so much as, the tenets of what is responsible recreation have all been the same. Social distance, don't congregate at trailheads, try and find some places close to home, wash your hands, leave no trace, clean up after yourself, all things like that. But on the state park side of things, at least what myself and my comms team we've been involved in, is our whole thing, and this kind of kicked off, I would say, around March 16th. That's been kind of like my metric about when this started to enter our minds as, hey, this is going to be impacting us possibly to a great extent, maybe to a little bit. At that point, we just very much didn't know. So one of the things that we thought of, thankfully, right off the bat was, since we're a land managing agency and we're the venue, you know, people go to REI and buy the fun toys, they rent their stuff off of Tentler, or they, you know, just decide to go out one weekend and they come to us. How are they going to know, if any, what impacts are going to be at where they're going? And what we found out about really quickly is that the individual counties all had different rules, especially as things went on. So one of the things that we decided to put together, first of all, was really harping on the one tenet of responsible recreation is check before you go. Before you planned to visit a recreation area, at the beginning it was mainly a state park, was to check the, you know, not the requirements, but the guidelines for that specific park before you go, that specific county, etc. And instead of just saying that and expecting people to go figure it out, what we did is we created a COVID-19 updates page on stateparks.utah.gov. I didn't know if we would be able to share our screens or not. India, are you able to do that, or?
Yep, I'll go ahead and share mine again.
Perfect. Kind of crazy how you can do all that. All right, so if you see here, this is our landing page, stateparks.utah.gov, and you see this notice bar up here. Oh, it's on your page. Slide 2. There we go. Sorry, I'm all looking at mine again. You see that notice bar? What we did is we made that notice bar follow you across every single page on our website. Stateparks.utah.gov has over, I think last I counted, 1,200 different pages. You know, 44 parks, every park has maps, every park has everything. So what we wanted to be sure is that no matter where people Googled or whatever they did, that they could somehow reach that COVID page. Next slide, please, India. Perfect. All right, so you see what we did is we put together a table that we continually kept updated over there on the left-hand side. If someone was wanting to go to, you know, Anasazi State Park Museum, they could check and see whether the park was completely open, whether the visitor center was closed, or same with Antelope Island or Dead Horse Point or any of the 44 state parks and recreation areas. And if you see up there where it says click to enlarge map, that little green map right there, we continually had that updated in a green versus gray scale so people could see, you know, if there were county restrictions in some parks that were located in specific counties or if there weren't. Now, Mark had mentioned how he got, what was it, Mark, over a billion impressions and a billion hits and stuff like that. That's completely much more than anything that we've gotten. But, you know, we might be a little fish, but we're actually very proud of how big this campaign got. Compared to this time last year, our website hits went up 1.3 million, which for us, that's, you know, up to, that's about a 25% increase just in that one little amount of time compared to this time last year. So what we were doing is, you know, sharing that page specifically, and I'll hurry up right here. But we're sharing that page out constantly, updating it, putting on there what the last date and time was, because sometimes this would change twice a day, letting people know the most current situation of the recreation areas near them. And then the next is we created a responsible recreation page. To be quite honest, at that point, we weren't aware that this had responsible recreation or recreate responsibly or other campaigns of that like had grown to how much that they were. But we did see National Park Service and other organizations pushing similar messages. So we thought, hey, let's do the same thing, put our logo on some things, jump on it, and start sharing these graphics. So we had some graphics created that, you know, showcased separate yourself and honor the social distance of others, stay away from parks and recreation when you're sick and have symptoms, pack it out, check before you go, things like that. And we made a lot of them in Spanish, and these were posted at parks. These were shared on all of our individual parks' social media channels. Most of our parks have their own channels as well as the main division one. And that's kind of what we've been doing, is trying to get that message out. We actually partnered with BLM Utah, U.S. Forest Service, and National Park Service and created similar graphics that were all used. You might have seen a lot of us sharing those out. I believe that was, yeah, that's in there too. It's slide number 9. And it just shows, you know, some litter areas, some great areas, explore the path less traveled, know before you go, things like that. And that's kind of been what our role has been during this whole time. And, you know, it's not a billion, but it's a million, and we're proud of it. And we're just happy that what we've seen is that people have started to listen to it. Mainly is the thing is that because a lot of surrounding states, like, you know, Nevada, for example, Nevada, for those of you that hate how I pronounce that, a lot of their parks and recreation areas were closed. So what we were finding, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, was a lot of the people entering parks in southern Utah were new. They hadn't, you know, they weren't familiar with the land. They weren't familiar with the infrastructure, garbage, things like that. So what we were doing with a lot of these graphics is when we were pushing them and boosting them and running them as ads, we were sharing them with surrounding areas and states that we were seeing people visiting from. That way they were aware, you know, we're open, we're happy to have visitors, but, you know, here's some things to keep in mind. And that's pretty much what we've been doing. I'm sure we'll get more into it, but that's a little quick overview.
Thanks, Devan. Appreciate it. I know, you know, from our perspective here in the governor's office and the Office of Outdoor Recreation, right? Lots of questions coming in about, you know, what is the proper way to recreate? How are we handling this? And these campaigns that, you know, State Parks has done, and also REI, and even, you know, Phill with his own personal social media channel and the message coming out, all are great resources that we can direct people to say, hey, you want to know how to, you want to know what this means? You know, what does responsible recreation mean? And what are kind of the aspects of it? Because as you know, as anything in our world these days, every topic is highly debatable. So you can say, oh, what's responsible recreation? And somebody's going to say, I don't think that's it. It's this, or I don't think, and you can get into a lot of discussions. I actually had a phone conversation with a friend yesterday who, you know, we were talking about it, and she said that she was on the trail with a friend hiking, and a mountain biker came down, and it sparked this discussion of, you know, what's proper trail etiquette, who has the right of way, blah, 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 you know, all of that normally comes, and, you know, to the point where then they started Googling on their phones to back up their claims of who was right and who was wrong. And I thought that was kind of interesting in this. And I think they can kind of go the same route with responsible recreation, right? What is responsible recreation? And, you know, it can mean a lot of different things to different people. So I wanted to jump in next and ask each of you, you know, what does that mean when we say, you know, protect yourself, whether that's social distancing in the outdoors or, you know, lowering your risk activities, you know, what does that mean? And also kind of what does it mean to protect others while recreating? Again, you know, these are all new things that we haven't typically been talking about in the past about responsible recreation, is how to, you know, protect yourself and protect others from a virus. You know, it's been respectful for the safety of others, but, you know, in this day and age, what does that mean? How, you know, so to reiterate, how does someone protect themselves while recreating now, and how do you and what are the actions to take to protect others as well and be respectful? And any one of you can jump in and answer this.
I'll jump in for a second. When I started Adventure Responsibly in that whole kind of movement, I was kind of I felt like this lone wolf, and Pitt, to your point, you know, there's a lot of different debate on it, and I would get a lot of response, people like, oh, thanks for the kindergarten lesson. It's like, well, unfortunately right now we need kindergarten lessons, apparently. The phrase, I think we've proven quite clearly that the phrase "avoid it like the plague" actually has no sway in our current society. We clearly don't avoid it, unfortunately. And so the principles of adventuring responsibly, recreating responsibly, however we want to call us, are incredibly important. And as we get into this, you know, like I said, I was starting this before the whole pandemic. The pandemic has now added an entirely new layer to this whole this whole movement and way to be in the outdoors. When we talk about protecting yourself, I always go back to the old adage of being prepared. Maybe it's cliche now to say that, but being prepared helps to protect you in the outdoors. If you know before you go, if you have, I'm surprised constantly by how many people don't even know, the 10 essentials, and being prepared for a wilderness experience. And so those couple of things, knowing before you go, being prepared, can help prepare you. And like Devan had talked about, with the social distancing rules that are being put into place, and don't congregate at trailheads, and all those type of different things. That's all kind of part of it. And that helps to protect the individual and ensure that you can have a safe and enjoyable time in the outdoors while also protecting the outdoors. When it comes to protecting others, this whole movement of adventuring responsibly, recreating responsibly, is in a large part as well being respectful to your fellow human beings. Is it wearing a mask? Is it the social distancing? Is it thinking beyond just yourself as an individual, and how can you better protect nature? How can you better protect your fellow humans while out there enjoying this incredible world that we have? Social distancing, but being prepared also comes back into that. If you are prepared and you can take care of yourself in a situation, that helps minimize the risk and impact that would come from needing the rescue, needing some sort of assistance. It protects the search and rescue folks. It protects the state park and national park employees. It's going beyond just thinking about yourself. It's if I'm prepared and if I'm able to take care of myself in the outdoors, that also minimizes the risk and impact to others. So those are the big things. Being prepared has been with us a long time, but it's just almost in a social media age flown out the nest, so to speak. Another thing to look at, and that I really adhere to and have been part of, is the nature first principles. And it was more a group that we came together when talking about in specific to landscape photography. I'm very involved in the landscape photography world, but I definitely encourage people to take a look at that, because it applies to just adventuring in general. So I kind of look at it, Pitt, in a few different, protecting yourself, protecting others, and protecting nature. So I'll get off my soapbox now and turn it over.
I'll jump in and just
go ahead. Go ahead, Devan. I'm actually curious to hear, Devan, what you obviously have the state parks has a bigger responsibility in managing groups, because it is a congregation zone as opposed to kind of the free range, normal trailheads or whatever. So, how do state parks and how do you deal with the crowds as they come to your venues?
So to go off, that's exactly what I was going to start talking about, was to push twofold. Was one, to push out what people could expect when they get here, whether you're going to Snow Canyon State Park, Antelope Island State Park, what have you. That table beforehand was a great way for people to see whether the park was fully open, whether the visitor center was closed, or whether camping, had restrictions. But state parks, due to COVID-19, never had a big shutdown. We've always been open, even if it was just to members of that county. So we always had visitors. So that was something that we were having to pick up fairly quickly. And one of the things that we did is, as we saw a lot of our parks, get more open and get busier and busier and busier, especially like some parks in our southern zones, is that we increased staffing, whether that be law enforcement rangers, actively ensuring that there weren't, big congregations of people, and they go and be like, hey, let's try and break this up a little bit, to letting people know about other areas of the park that aren't as frequently visited, like promoting those places or even those parks in those counties, find a road less traveled kind of a thing in order to spread people out. That was a big one that we were trying to do. And then the other one was, different counties had different rules regarding congregations. So whether that was, campsites had to be a certain amount of distance apart. And that was, we had a person here at state parks whose a lot of their job during this whole entire thing was just ensuring that each park was compliant with different health districts, health departments. And that was very, very helpful because it let us tell the public what they could expect before they got there. That way there was no surprises. And then lastly, a thing that's been a lot in the news and on social media lately is that we implemented capacity limits at our parks. And that every state park's a little different. If you've been to Sand Hollow, it's drastically different than Quail Creek down the street in regards to the amount of land available to recreate on, parking, things like that. Antelope Island's very different than Schofield is different than a museum. So what we had our region managers and park managers do is figure out, what that looks like, to where when the parking lot and parking gets to X, we know that, hey, that means that there's this much room left. We gotta figure out, what we're gonna do. And then if it comes down to it, we've reached capacity. We don't like to say the word closed because the park's open, there's people in there, but we would limit entry because we didn't want to, get it to an unsafe level amount of people. That's still going on right now at many of our parks. If you go down to some of them, they're implementing these capacity limits. And then they announce on social media and on their website, the gate's back open, we're letting people in, and just ensuring that message is getting out. Because what we don't want is we don't want people, unaware, traveling for 4 hours, getting there and then being surprised that the gate closed, or not closed, but the gate limited entry, for the past 6 hours. So that's been a big one. And then finally is ensuring people are aware of the different land managing agencies. I'm biased towards state parks because I work for them and I love them, but there's plenty of other recreation areas out there. BLM has a ton of areas, U.S. Forest Service, and PS has, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful places. And what we did with that is that we made a digital clearinghouse on coronavirus.utah.gov/recreation, which we also pushed people to, which gave them contact information of ways to find out the status of all the different recreation areas in the state of Utah. So we were on there, we made sure National Park Service was on there, BLM was on there, Forest Service was on there, all of us had representatives contributing to that page. And that way, if, let's say, all the state parks in St. George reached capacity in one day, let's just say that happened, we could push people to that page, hey, find some other recreation areas nearby. Push into that page, it gives you all the Forest Service and BLM information. So what a big part of what we did, I guess, combining it all into one, is giving the public access to information about the options in their area. And I think that was really, really essential in how we've been able to continue doing this.
Great, thank you, Devan. And I agree. I think communication's been the key to a lot of this. So to move that along a little bit, Mark, obviously with the big reach that REI has and the partnerships and everything else, getting messaging out about how to protect yourself and social distancing and wearing a mask is all great. What about the messaging around actual protection of the outdoors and nature while recreating, right? Obviously we're seeing heavy use, so how do we get that message out? And from a brand perspective or a retailer perspective and a national reach there, kind of what I want to hear your view on is what can groups like, the Office of Outdoor Recreation, land managers, Forest Service, national parks, state parks, nonprofits, all of these different types of groups, what can they do more, even more than just spreading the word and reposting, your campaign and things like that, but, what they do to help educate people on disposing waste and communicating, regulations or special concerns for an area, or this messaging of plan ahead. How do all these nonprofits and land managers and offices of recreation, how do we work together to make sure that message is getting out effectively?
I actually think there are probably a lot of big questions that are emerging during a time of COVID and big questions within the outdoor community. I saw one in the chat box about funding. That's a big question too. And Pitt, you put your finger on yet another big question. Right here, right now, I don't know if I have a discrete answer for you because it is such a big question, but I would observe that as this call indicates itself, we're seeing unprecedented levels of collaboration across the outdoor community. Devan was talking about the collaboration, across agencies in highlighting closures and openings and trying to get after that persistent, what I call load balancing challenge, which is, how do you keep the popular parks from becoming so popular that they get worn down, and then the less loved parks from becoming even less loved and worn down in the process too. I think in the current time frame, especially with so many new users out there, we may just be in a mode right now where we are starting with the basics, where we are starting with the notion of think ahead. Back to Phil's point, we need people who are visiting the outdoors to sort of have that broader sense of consciousness, that these are our community assets. These are our society assets. They're not. We enjoy them as individuals, but when we're out there, they're for all of us to enjoy, but also sustain. And so maybe in the current time frame, it is about the basics of know where you go, and to your point, Pitt, leave no trace. I think there is follow-on work to be done to dig into these things, and do that second layer of education, and that's where there may be opportunity for us as we continue to live through the pandemic into the summer and probably beyond. We won't have the opportunity before 4th of July. Time is just too short to do the click down into what does it mean to leave no trace. The high order message is sort of the most we're going to be able to amplify. But we are building at recreateresponsibly.org, we are building out a resource hub, and Leave No Trace is part of the effort, and there they will have their educational tools available. And so as we assemble this larger community of people who want to educate the new users, I think we'll just have more and more collaboration spaces for these click down or these second order lessons. And I guess my fundamental point is, if we stick with this, and even if we stick with it beyond the time where COVID is prevalent, and we think about most of these principles as applying not just for the next year, but for the next 5 years and the next 10 years, then I think collectively we'll hopefully do a better job educating folks on what are those essentials that you bring with you. How is it that you think about your local impact when you arrive? And how is it that you actually leave no trace? So persistence and in our collaboration, I think is a theme to keep top of mind.
Great, thank you, Phill. I'll give you a chance here to speak. I want to just say right now, anybody that has any questions, start putting them in the chat now. We'll kind of go one more question here that I have for the group, and then open it up for question and answer for a minute. And Phill, as you speak, and anybody else, kind of finishing up, the last question that I want to add on to this for each of you to discuss is, how can one person, how can Pitt as an individual, when I go out on a bike ride in the morning, or I take my kids out on a hike or down to the lake to fish or something, how can I make a positive impact on outdoor recreation? And not just now, not just here during COVID, but forever and ever, and when we return to normal and whatever it holds in the future, how do I make that impact as an individual?
I would say just model best behavior. My thing is road running, and I'm aware that when I pass people they don't want to receive my huffing and puffing. And so, I'll pull up my shirt. And then a bicyclist will pass me. And if a bicyclist passed me and they've given me 6 feet, I give them a thumbs up. If a bicyclist is coming at me and he's only going to give me 3 feet of separation, I do a little, gentle, wave of the hands, urging that person to give me some more space. And so I think each of us can be, especially we as sort of practitioners, we can be models, and hopefully people pick up on that modeling and do it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Modeling is a massive thing, especially in our current digital social media age. I think, I read quickly on the comment thing that, we've got this paradigm right now where more than ever, there's more and more people going outdoors, but the unfortunate reality is that many of these people are new to the outdoors, or they see something on social media and they think that's cool, I'm just going to go, and they don't really pay any mind to the reality behind that adventure. And so it's imperative that as individuals we use whatever platform we have, or however many followers you have, or lack thereof, that you be the example and promote. And I try to do this in a very positive way. Nobody wants to be lectured to, least of all myself, but in a positive way to educate folks on how to adventure responsibly. And I of course we're talking about the here and now and with the COVID situation, but I look at this in a much broader sense as, if and when this ever goes away and we have some sort of normalcy again, those principles still need to be intact and practiced. And Pitt, you were talking about, not only our individual impact, which I think goes to, leaving no trace, but beyond that, and the old principle of leaving it better than you found it. And that we can unpack that on another call, because that's its own separate topic. But that's one thing that Leave No Trace doesn't talk about is, it focuses on the self, but what about as an individual? What can you do to remedy situations that are beyond what you have done? I also look at things like, on a broader scope of, what can other organizations do? What can we all, we're all in this together. And when I was growing up, we had things like Woodsy Owl. There was Captain Planet. There was the incredible Don't Waste Utah campaign. And you just don't see those things anymore, unfortunately. And so I would love, one thing that I love about what your organization has done, Pitt, is the Every Kid Outdoors initiative. What an incredible thing to do is to get all these kids from all walks of life outdoors from an early age to appreciate these places and help from this young age to encourage them to be better land stewards and to protect these places. I would call on tourism agencies, especially the state tourism agency, that when they promote these places and they say, hey, everybody go to this place and check it out, and it encourages a swath of people to go there, it's their responsibility to as well include adventure or recreate responsibly principles in that. Hey, when you go there, it's amazing, check it out, everyone should go, but here's some practices that you should really put into place. So not only is it on the individual, it's a much broader sense as well, to protect ourselves, protect others, and to protect the outdoors.
And adding on to what everyone said, I mean, what's been said is pretty much what I was going to say. So Phill took the words right out of my mouth about leading by example, and so did Mark. Is that, if you're the one out there on the path, just like we say to people with kids, they're always watching. I'd say the same thing about first-time recreators. I mean, I've done a bunch of outdoor recreation activities for the first time myself. First time I was climbing, I remember I was just looking over and I was like, what's he doing? you know, and whether they know I'm looking at them or not. I think it's no different than you picking up a piece of trash on the side of the trail or utilizing, you know, facilities appropriately. Recreators are gonna see that, especially first-time ones that are somewhere new for the first time and don't know what's going on, and try and pick up that, you know, culture, the lingo, the everything about it. And I think a big part of it is, like you guys said, as new people come in, the message is continually needing to be said again and again and again and again. That, I think that's a good thing, even though it's repetitive and we get the people saying, you know, thanks for the, you know, kindergarten lesson. Everyone knows XYZ, but as we know, everyone doesn't know XYZ. And if we want people to care about these places, I think that getting them out and falling in love with the natural beauty is how we get them to care. So we get them to come back. That first-time user that didn't know the ins and outs of leave no trace or leaving it better than you found it, we get them to come back and come back and come back and fall in love with these places. That way they become the people in the future that are being watched by the next new people. And I think that's a big way that we can go about doing that, along with, you know, just leading by example in the first place.
Thank you all for your feedback on that. And I want to emphasize that, you know, as Phill was kind of saying, and Mark both, that, you know, the positive reinforcement is excellent and very helpful, right? Nobody wants to be told what to do. Nobody wants to be flipped off when they're riding their bike and say like, hey, keep your distance, you know, or anything like that. That doesn't help the situation. And even from my perspective, right, you know, when I take my kids out hiking and, you know, I see some garbage, I'll pick it up. You know, I've had to change my ways in saying, you know, instead of muffling under my breath like, oh, idiots who left their garbage right in front of my children, I don't want them to get that mentality of that's how we talk about other people or, you know, anything like that. And so it becomes another learning opportunity to kind of avoid any kind of bad blood that may come from that, and keeping it really positive. And yes, you know, some people blatantly make bad decisions and know they're doing it, but for the most part, it's a lot of people that just don't know, and we need to take the time to educate and to be patient and share that messaging. So thank you for all your input. We have a couple questions that I think are pretty interesting here that we'll jump into. We've got about 6 or 7 minutes left. So one question is kind of along those same lines, right? There's a lot of emphasis on messaging and education. Are we, you know, by having this talk and the people that are on this and the people that are seeing the responsible recreation, you know, is that preaching to the choir? You know, those people are kind of already in the know, like we say, but how do we reach the people that aren't necessarily tuned into these outdoor recreation channels of communication that we're using, whether that's social media or not, or maybe they don't even know about state park websites or, you know, anything like that? How do we reach those other people, the percent of people that are just completely in a different demographic as far as where to find resources and just don't even know where to start about information and things like that? Any tips on that?
I just come back to my point about persistence, and you know, if we are collaborating in an unprecedented manner now, let's stick with it for the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. You know, we're talking about harmonizing our message. We can also start to work on signage. Is there, you know, uniform signage? Are there novel partners that we should be working with? I think it was Phill who mentioned travel agencies or tourist and destination marketers. So I think it's about working towards harmonized messaging and then propagating that into through new partnerships.
Yeah, that's a great point. On the signage and messaging, I'm a UX designer by day, and sometimes when I see those signs, I almost have a stroke when seeing this. You know, there's a lot of confusion on there, and there's a lot of information that needs to be presented, and I think we could do some better things. I more take a little bit of a radical approach where I'm talking about education. It seems like technology, which is cool, technology is great, has just taken such a forefront in education that we've completely sidestepped wilderness education in the school system. And I would love to see, whatever, public schools, private schools, whatever, an actual outdoor education program to help with, it doesn't have to be, completely crazy and over the top, but something to help at an early age, but then as well, working with various agencies and any and all channels that we can to get out there is going to help. And to Mark's point is that persistence. We all have a responsibility to keep on this message in the long haul.
And at least some of the things we've done on our end is try and find avenues that traditionally where recreators don't look. For example, when we had the issue with, not really it's a good issue to have, but with a lot of our southern parks getting hit from out-of-state visitors. When we were doing a lot of these responsible recreation campaigns, we were specifically geo-targeting like Las Vegas, for example, because we were noticing a lot of people coming from Las Vegas that, didn't really have much else to do. A lot of stuff was shut down, like I said. So hitting in mass those people coming from specific areas that might not have it, or even if it's as far as targeting people with specific interests unrelated to outdoor recreation. My boss, I made fun of him at first for it, Eugene Swellberg, he's probably listening right now, but we recently started a partnership with Storm Bowling, a bowling company. What does bowling have to do with state parks? Well, we're finding it right now that we're able to reach a demographic of people that we weren't targeting before. And a lot of that is, awareness of natural resources and safety messages. We're partnering with these people that have a extremely large following that isn't used to seeing these recreation messages. And I think that if we can broaden our reach in ways like that, not specifically just bowling, but like if we want to advertise at esports campaigns or something, that broadening our reach outside of the people who are already in the choir helps. But I think also recruiting the people who are already members of the choir to push those messages to their friends and family helps too. And I think we're all doing a good job of that.
We're just about out of time, but just to address one more question here, right? This responsible recreation message, taking care of the land, being respectful to others, all of these things that kind of come along with that. Just kind of last question: how do we apply this same thing to inclusivity of all users to the outdoors? Right? We want to make sure that the outdoors become a safe place. We want to welcome people to the outdoors, and we want to make sure that people from all backgrounds, all demographics, feel the outdoors is that safe place, that place to get a release, that place to get a little freedom, and also to kind of get the fresh air and the recharge that they need. So with this messaging, I know this is kind of a little bit of a pivot, but the questions came up in the chat. With this messaging of responsible recreation, how does that apply to also inclusivity?
Pitt, I put a response in the chat box to sum it up. This is an active conversation within the Recreate Responsibly Coalition, and there's a sign up at recreateresponsibly.org if you want to join the conversation. We're trying to figure out how to weave that very principle of inclusion and welcoming into the package as a higher order principle that sort of is always on and encompasses the others.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit in there, and this is coming from a white guy, but I think it's imperative that we bring in other voices, and especially I've been chatting and working with Outdoor Afro, which is an awesome group that is so involved in nature conservation, getting other groups of people outdoors and seeing the benefits of what the outdoors can do for us as individuals, as people. I can't emphasize enough how we need to also just people who have been outdoors and have constant access to that. We don't take that for granted. And we look at including others. The outdoors is for everyone, and we always have that at top of mind, that we're welcoming, that it's positive, that these things are not seen as barriers to entry, but that they are seen as something for everyone to have a better time in the outdoors, and to as well protect the outdoors. So definitely encourage people to look into those different organizations and help out and get involved with them as well.
Yeah, on the state parks end of things, I mean, these are the state of Utah's parks. They're for everybody and anybody that we can get to come in. And like I said, and to continue on with what Phill said, is that continual outreach to these different groups and different demographics and stuff like that is important. And especially when we're talking about, I know this isn't a leave no trace conversation or stuff like that, but as we're trying to get people to spread that message, even about the COVID-19, stuff going on, we're seeing a lot of these new demographics and new people from new places coming in to parks because they're looking for, to get outside of their apartments or their houses and things like that. And at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want some fresh air, right? So I think the more we can spread the message of the areas available and how to recreate responsibly and safely and for yourself and for those around you, the more people we can, get on our team. I think we all want to be on Team Outdoors.
I agree. Thanks, Devan. Thank you all for being here today. We're out of time. Phill, Devan, and Mark, I really appreciate the input and the feedback and the participation from the listeners and questions. Really insightful. And I feel like this movement and the opportunity, is gaining traction and moving forward, and it's going to help develop outdoor recreation and the users and who participates for years to come. As I've been in meetings this last week, one thing that I've heard a lot is, you never let a good crisis go to waste. And this, I think we are taking advantage of this crisis to move forward really important talking points about responsible recreation, about leave no trace, about inclusivity, all of these things that are coming from this, 2020 wild ride that we're on. I think will really help to move the importance of outdoor recreation and the value that it really brings to all of our lives. So I really appreciate all the work that you three are doing, and everybody out there, all the work you're doing. Please feel free to reach out to our office at any point with questions and ideas, and we love to talk and connect and collaborate with everybody from across the state. So again, thank you very much. Everybody have a great day, and get out and recreate responsibly. So we'll see you.
Thanks for having us, Pitt, India. Thanks for your work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.